The stars of the Cathari system shone like frozen fire over the silver surface of the alien planet. The Earth ship Resolute drifted in low orbit, its engines humming softly as a small shuttle prepared to descend. Inside sat Commander Ethan Vale, the man Earth had chosen to represent humanity before one of the most advanced races in the quadrant, the Valerians. Ethan wasn't new to danger or diplomacy. He had walked through battlefields and spoken across tables where one wrong word could start a war. But nothing prepared him for the Valerians, a species known for their grace, its intelligence, and absolute devotion to ritual. The briefing said they communicated through gestures as much as words. A movement of the hand, a tilt of the head, even a breath could change the meaning of a sentence. He studied the file again as the shuttle dropped through the clouds. The name on top read, Lasara of the First House, High Envoy of the Valerian Accord. The translator described her as calm, analytical, and precise, but also unpredictable when protocol was broken. Ethan smiled faintly. Sounds like half the admirals I know, he muttered. The shuttle touched down on a vast landing platform of crystal glass. Beyond it stretched tall spires that looked like frozen waves. Hundreds of Valerians stood silently, their robes fluttering in a wind that seemed to carry whispers. Ethan stepped out, helmet under his arm, feeling their eyes on him. Every movement mattered here. Every step was watched. A tall figure approached, Lysera. Her armor shimmered like water and light. She had the kind of presence that silenced an entire room without speaking. Her face was calm, her silver eyes steady, her tone soft but commanding. "Welcome, Commander Vale of Earth," she said through the translator, her voice echoing faintly. "You stand before the Valerian Accord in peace." Ethan bowed slightly. "In peace and friendship. Earth seeks understanding, not conquest." The council behind her murmured approval, but Lysara didn't respond immediately. She looked at him as if measuring the weight of his words. Then she turned and motioned him to follow. Inside the hall of glass, the air smelled of flowers and metal. 1,000 lights floated in the air, reacting to motion. The walls shifted color with every step. Ethan followed Lysara through the chamber, noticing how her people's armor moved like living fabric. Everything was beautiful, but also strange. At the center of the hall stood a circular dais surrounded by guards. Lysara stopped, turning to face him. "Before our people can speak, there must be a showing of truth," she said. "Our customs require openness." Ethan nodded. "I'll follow your lead." She hesitated for the first time since he'd arrived. The guard's eyes flicked toward her. Slowly, she raised her hands and began to unfasten the glowing clasps of her ceremonial armor. One piece after another fell away, not in a rush, but as if it were a sacred act. The hall went silent, except for the soft sound of metal touching glass. Ethan froze. His mind ran through every cultural warning in the manual. Was this normal? Was he supposed to look away? Say something. Step forward? He could feel every guard watching him. One wrong move could insult their entire race. The translator in his ear whispered a soft explanation. In Valerian custom, the removal of armor means trust. To walk unguarded before another is the highest gesture of respect. Ethan's shoulders relaxed slightly, but his pulse still raced. Lysara stopped after removing the final piece of her shoulder guard. Her silver eyes met his. "You may respond, Commander Vale," she said quietly. "But if you refuse this gesture, the treaty ends before it begins." The hall felt like it held its breath. Ethan understood now. This wasn't about embarrassment or attraction. It was about courage. About showing that humanity could meet trust with trust. He slowly placed his helmet on the floor, unstrapped the armor across his chest, and laid it aside piece by piece. His movements were calm, careful, deliberate. He didn't want to mirror her ritual. He wanted to honor it. When he stood straight again, only his simple undersuit remained. The air was cool against his skin. "I stay," he said softly. "Teach me what this means to you." A ripple of shock passed through the council. Some of the guards lowered their weapons slightly. Lysara blinked as if she hadn't expected him to understand. Her expression softened. "You." "Stay," she repeated, almost to herself. Few would have done so. What followed was silence. Deep, respectful silence. Then Lysara spoke again, explaining each symbol on the floor between them. The circle represented truth, the lights represented memory, and the space between represented the unknown that all explorers carried inside them. Ethan listened carefully. Her voice was steady, but there was something vulnerable beneath it, a kind of trembling she tried to hide. He realized this ritual wasn't just about diplomacy. It was personal. Every Valerian who stood here had to reveal something they feared. When she placed her hand on the lighted circle, the color changed from white to blue. "This light means honesty," she said. "When we stand inside it, we must not lie." Ethan nodded. "Then I'll speak the truth." She looked at him directly. "Are you afraid of us?" He hesitated. "A little," he admitted. "Not because of what you are, but because of how easily humans misunderstand others. We tend to fear what we don't know." Her eyes softened. "That fear makes you careful. Care can build peace." The hall seemed to approve of his words. The light brightened, echoing around them like a living thing. For the first time, Ethan saw a faint smile on Lysara's face. They continued for hours questions, gestures, explanations. Ethan shared stories of Earth, of oceans that roared and mountains that breathed fire. Lysara told him about her people's floating cities, their music made of light, their endless struggle to keep war from consuming their worlds. The more they spoke, the less alien they seemed. When the ritual ended, Lysara reattached her armor slowly. "The showing is complete," she said. "The council will deliberate." As she turned to leave, Ethan said quietly, "Thank you for trusting me." She paused mid-step. "Trust is not given," she replied. "It is risked. You did not turn away when I began the ritual. You stayed." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe humanity isn't as blind as everyone thinks." She gave him a long look, then walked away without another word. That night, Ethan stood by the window of his guest quarters, looking out at the glowing city below. He thought about what had happened, how one small gesture could mean peace or war. He didn't know what the council would decide, but he knew one thing, that moment, when he chose to stay, had changed something in both of them. Across the city, Lysara stood on a balcony watching the same stars. Her attendants asked if the human had insulted her. She shook her head. "No," she said softly. "He did something no one has ever done." He understood. She touched the metal plate of her armor where his reflection had once glimmered. There was warmth there, a strange feeling she couldn't name. Humans were considered dangerous, unpredictable, and yet this one had shown restraint when others would have acted from fear, in Valerian belief. Destiny was a river unchangeable, flowing from one life to another. But Lysara felt the current shift that night. The next morning the council convened. The chamber was vast, lined with living crystal that pulsed like a heartbeat. Ethan stood in the center while Lysara spoke to the elders. The human did not refuse the showing, she said firmly. He stood unguarded and unafraid. He showed the meaning of his world's name, humanity. The eldest counselor, a being with eyes like smoke, tilted his head. "You risked our honor for an outsider, Lysara." "I risked nothing," she answered. "I learned." The council murmured among themselves. One of them turned to Ethan. "Human, if your people can respect what you do not understand, then perhaps we are not so different." Ethan bowed. "Understanding starts with one choice, to listen." After a long silence, the eldest counselor said, "Then we will listen." When the meeting ended, Lysara walked beside him through the corridor of lights. The walls shimmered with every step. She stopped near the exit and turned to him. "Our people may accept your words, but they do not yet know your heart. They fear you hide weapons behind kindness." Ethan looked at her seriously. "And what do you think?" She hesitated, then said softly, "I think. You stayed when you could have walked away. That is not the act of an enemy." They stood there, facing each other, surrounded by silence and soft light. Neither spoke for several moments. The air carried a quiet understanding between them, something fragile, but real. Finally, Ethan said, "If trust is a risk, then I'll take it." Lysara's expression softened again. Be careful, human. Risks have consequences. He smiled faintly. So does fear. As he left the hall, Lysara watched him go. She realized that her question, "Will you stay if I undress, human?" had not been about the ritual at all. It had been about whether he would face vulnerability without retreating. And he had answered in a way no one in her world ever had. That night, when she stood alone under the starlight, she whispered to herself, "He stayed." For the first time in her life, the words brought her peace. The next sunrise over Valyria came with a pale golden light that flowed across the crystal towers like living fire. Ethan Vale had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lysara standing in that silent hall, her armor falling away piece by piece, her eyes waiting for his answer. He had stayed. And because of that single choice, everything had changed. He rose and walked to the wide glass window. From this height, the city looked like a sea of mirrors. Distant ships drifted between the towers, their engines glowing softly. The air carried a strange calm, but underneath it, he felt the same pressure that came before a storm. Somewhere out there. The council was deciding whether the humans were worthy of alliance or better kept at arm's length. A soft tone sounded at the door. "Enter," he said. Lysara stepped in, wearing light silver robes instead of armor. Without the weight of ceremonial metal, she looked almost human tired, graceful, uncertain. Her hands were clasped in front of her chest. "Commander Vale," she said formally, "the council is called for a private session this evening. Before that, I am to teach you the meanings behind our gestures. It is part of the preparation." Ethan smiled. "An honor." Her expression didn't change, but her eyes softened. "You should know, not everyone is pleased with what happened yesterday." "I guessed as much," he said quietly. "Still, I don't regret it." She tilted her head. "Even if it costs you this treaty?" He looked out at the brightening sky. "Sometimes peace has a price, but misunderstanding has a greater one." Lysara studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then come. We begin at dawn." They walked through the lower gardens of the Valyrian Spire, where glowing vines hung like threads of light. The air was warm and filled with a low hum, as though the plants themselves were alive with thought. Lysara stopped near a pool of silver water. "Our people speak with movement," she began. "Words are for facts. Gestures are for truth. When I turned my hand yesterday, you thought it was an invitation. In truth, it meant surrender of fear." Ethan watched carefully as she moved her hands. "So this," he said, mimicking the motion, "means trust?" "Not exactly," she corrected gently. "It means I am listening without walls. Few ever use it. To show the inside of the palm is to reveal that one carries no weapon." He nodded slowly. "Then yesterday, you risked a great deal." She gave a faint smile. "So did you." For hours, they practiced small gestures, how to tilt the head to show agreement, how to stand to express openness. Ethan learned quickly, surprising her more than once. Every time he made a mistake, he laughed it off, and soon she found herself laughing too. It was a light sound, rare and soft, and it startled even her. When they rested, she looked at him curiously. "Your people learn with such speed. Is it because of fear of failure?" "Maybe," he said, smiling, "but sometimes it's hope. We want to understand those we meet. It's what keeps us alive." Lysara turned that over in her mind. "On my world, we avoid hope. It blinds as easily as it guides." He leaned back against a tree that glowed faintly. "Maybe, but without it, you never take the first step." No, she didn't answer, but the look in her eyes said she was listening. By midday, the lessons were done. Lysara led him through the marketplace, where hundreds of Valyrians floated and walked among stalls of shining crystal. When they saw her with a human, whispers spread like a current. Ethan kept his posture calm, but he could feel the tension. Some merchants turned away. Others stared with curiosity. Lysara finally stopped beside a stall that sold floating glass spheres. "They fear you," she said softly. "Not because you have harmed them, but because they cannot imagine why someone would choose to stay unguarded in our hall. They believe there must be another motive." Ethan looked at her. And what do you believe? She hesitated. I believe curiosity can be honest. But I also believe honesty can be dangerous. He smiled faintly. On Earth we say the same thing.
Ow.
She studied his face. Then perhaps we are not so different after all. For a moment, neither spoke. The noise of the market faded. A small Valerian child approached, staring up at Ethan's tall frame. The child reached out, touching his hand with wonder. Ethan knelt slightly and let the child's fingers trace the glove's fabric. The mother gasped, pulling the child away. But Lysara raised her hand in reassurance. Let them be, she said gently. He means no harm. The mother hesitated, then bowed slightly before leading the child away. Lysara looked back at him. You could have frightened them, she said. I didn't want to, he replied simply. Fear is heavy. I've carried enough of it in my life. Her gaze lingered on him, full of quiet respect. For the first time, she began to understand what made humans dangerous and what made them noble. That evening, the council gathered. The chamber was filled with tall figures whose robes shimmered in colors of rank. Ethan stood in the center again, but this time the air was heavier. An elder named Varian spoke first. Commander Vale, your actions yesterday broke tradition. You remained when the envoy undressed her armor. In our records, no outsider has been permitted that sight. Do you understand the weight of what you did? Ethan answered calmly, I understood it was meant to show truth. I chose to honor that truth. Some disapproved, others whispered agreement. Another counselor leaned forward. Or perhaps you sought power through sentiment. Lysara stepped forward before Ethan could speak. Enough, she said sharply. He acted with respect, not manipulation. I was there. The hall fell silent. No one interrupted a high envoy so openly. Varian's eyes narrowed. You defend him at the risk of your own position? I defend what is right, she said firmly. Ethan watched quietly. He could see the tremor in her hands, the courage it took to speak that way. She was risking everything, her title, her honor, her safety, for a man she had met only days ago. Varian's voice lowered. Then we will test his intentions. The human must undergo the trial of balance. Lysara's breath caught. That is forbidden for outsiders. Not forbidden, the elder said coldly. Unattempted. If he passes, we accept the alliance. If he fails, your defense will be your disgrace. Ethan met her eyes. What's the trial? She looked pale. It is not a contest of strength, she said quietly. It measures one's heart. It exposes every hidden thought, every fear, every lie. Many of my people have not survived it. Ethan didn't flinch. Then it sounds like something humanity should face. The next morning, the trial chamber opened beneath the main hall. It was a vast circle of light surrounded by endless mirrors. As Ethan stepped inside, he could see reflections of himself stretching in all directions. Lysara stood outside the ring, her hands clasped tightly. Whatever you see. She warned, it will be shaped by your own mind. Do not fight it. Face it. He nodded once. If this is what it takes for peace, I'll face anything. When the trial began, the mirrors rippled. Images formed not of aliens, but of Earth. Burning cities, battles, soldiers falling. He saw himself giving orders, making choices that had cost lives. Guilt flooded his chest. A voice deep and cold spoke from nowhere. You call yourself a peacemaker, yet your hands are stained with war. Ethan closed his eyes. Yes, he said softly. But I fight so others don't have to. The voice hissed again. And when peace breaks, will you destroy us too? He shook his head. No, not this time. The mirrors flared white and then dimmed. The reflection of war faded, replaced by Lysara's face, calm and steady. The voice whispered one last time, then stay true. The light vanished. The chamber returned to silence. When Ethan opened his eyes, the mirrors were still. The council stood watching from above. Lysara ran to him, her eyes wide. You passed, she said softly. The mirrors turned clear. That has not happened in centuries. He gave a weary smile. Guess honesty works everywhere, the council murmured among themselves. Finally, Varian stood. The human has faced the balance and remained whole. The Accord recognizes the courage of his kind. The hall erupted in light as the treaty seal formed above them. 2 circles joined by a bridge of blue fire. Lysara turned to him. "You have changed what we thought possible," she said. Ethan looked around at the shimmering light, then back at her. "No, Ambassador. We changed it together." That night Valyria celebrated for the first time in decades. The city towers glowed brighter than ever, and songs of harmony echoed through the spires. Ethan and Lysara stood on a balcony, overlooking the lights. "I never thought I'd see this day," she said quietly. He smiled. "Neither did I guess staying was worth it." She looked at him, the faint starlight dancing across her silver eyes. "When I asked that question," she said softly, "I was testing you. I thought humans were only capable of pride or fear, but you showed something else." "What's that?" he asked. "Patience," she said. "And patience is rarer than any weapon." He chuckled. "You should see me in traffic back on Earth." She frowned in confusion, and he laughed. She didn't understand the joke, but she smiled anyway. For a moment, everything was quiet, the city glowing below, the stars endless above. Then Lysara spoke again, almost in a whisper. "Ethan Vale, will you stay?" He turned toward her, understanding now that her words were not a test, but a hope. "For now," he said softly, "and for whatever comes next." The wind carried their words away into the night, across the glowing towers and the shining skies of a world that, for the first time, truly knew humanity. And somewhere deep in her heart, Lysara thought, the human stayed, and so did peace. The first light of dawn spilled over the crystalline towers of Valyria, painting the city in soft gold and silver. Commander Ethan Vale stood on the balcony of the envoy quarters, looking down at the streets below. Despite the celebrations the night before, there was a quiet tension that lingered in the air. The council had accepted humanity's goodwill, but Lysara's bold defense of him had created ripples of doubt among the elders. Ethan had expected some unrest. He had walked through battles and seen leaders weigh each decision against the lives of thousands. Diplomacy often demanded patience, but he had not anticipated the weight of an alien society's scrutiny. Still, he knew one thing. The moment he had chosen to stay in the ritual hall had changed everything. Not just for him, but for both their peoples. Lysara appeared silently at his side, her silver robes flowing in the morning breeze. For the first time since they met, she was unarmored, carrying only her staff of rank. Her hair shimmered like moonlight. "The council calls me," she said quietly. "They are divided. Some believe my actions endangered the Accord. Others recognize what you did yesterday. It has forced them to question their long-held beliefs." Ethan nodded. "Then I'm glad I stayed. I didn't realize staying could cause so much change." She gave a small, dry smile. "Change is not always welcome, human. But sometimes it is necessary." Together, they walked through the Hall of Mirrors, a sacred place where Valyrians came to meditate, reflect, and understand. Each step they took echoed softly, the mirrors reflecting their forms in multiple angles. Ethan glanced at his reflections and saw 1,000 versions of himself, some tall, some short, some older, some younger. Each reflected a choice he had ever made. "Here," Lysara said, stopping in the center of the hall, "we confront our own fears. The council wishes to test you further, not with weapons, not with politics, but with perception. You must face what you fear in your heart, and in doing so, demonstrate the truth of your intentions." Ethan looked around. "What exactly will happen?" "The mirrors will show you visions of yourself, of your people, and of your choices. You will see mistakes, failures, and fears. You must acknowledge them. Only then will they believe humanity can be trusted." Ethan took a deep breath. "Then I'm ready." As the trial began, the mirrors shimmered and transformed. Ethan saw the earth he knew, oceans filled with ships, mountains covered in forests, cities teeming with life. But the reflections quickly shifted. He saw Earth in flames, burning under conflict, nations divided, leaders failing, and innocent lives lost. His chest tightened as he watched familiar cities crumble, homes destroyed, and children crying. A voice echoed from nowhere, deep and resonant. "You call yourself a protector, yet your hands are stained with war. How can we trust you?" Ethan closed his eyes. He remembered the faces of people he had saved and those he had failed. "I do not claim perfection," he said softly, "but I fight to protect life. Every decision I make, every risk I take, is for others, not myself." The mirrors shifted again, showing moments of his life, times he hesitated, at times he doubted, moments when fear could have consumed him. Each reflection was raw and unflinching. The voice spoke again. "And when faced with choice, will you protect yourself or humanity?" Ethan's hand clenched. "I will protect humanity, even if it costs me everything." The mirrors pulsed with light. The images of destruction faded, replaced with scenes of cooperation, peace, and understanding. Humans helping each other, working together, reaching out across differences. Lysara's reflection appeared, standing beside him in every scene. "Truth requires courage," the voice whispered. "You have shown it." Ethan opened his eyes. The hall was calm. The council watched from above, their expressions unreadable. Lysara stepped forward, her eyes shining with a mix of relief and pride. "You have passed," she said softly. "The trial of balance does not test skill, nor strength, nor cunning. It tests honesty and courage. You have faced your fears and remained true." A murmur of astonishment ran through the council. Many of the elders whispered among themselves. Some had never witnessed a human pass this trial. Lysara turned to them. "He has demonstrated what humanity can be. We must honor that, not doubt it." The council remained silent for a moment. Then Varen, the eldest, spoke. His voice was calm but firm. "It is true. The human has passed the trial. His actions prove that courage and truth are not bound by species. If the Accord is to succeed, we must learn from this example." Ethan exhaled slowly. Relief washed over him, but he kept his posture steady. He knew the trial was not just about him. It was about trust, understanding, and building a bridge between worlds. Lysara placed her hand lightly on his arm. "Few outsiders have ever come this far," she said quietly. "Few could have endured the mirrors and remained true. You have changed the course of our accord." Ethan smiled faintly. "I only stayed. You guided me." That made all the difference. Later, as they walked through the gardens, Lysara spoke of her own doubts. "I feared yesterday," she admitted. "I feared my people would judge me, that they would see my trust as weakness. And yet, in choosing to remain true, you taught me something I had not learned in all my years, that courage is more than strength. It is understanding, patience, and the willingness to remain when all else tells you to leave." Ethan glanced at her. "And you, Lysara, showed me that trust is worth taking. That understanding begins with a single choice. That is something no alien manual could teach." For the first time, they walked together in silence, simply observing the glowing gardens. The soft hum of life, the warmth of light, and the faint scent of alien flora filled the air. "Tomorrow," Sara said quietly, "we will present the treaty to our people. They will see that a human has passed their trials. Some will celebrate, some will doubt. But your actions cannot be undone." Ethan nodded. "Then let them see. Humanity is willing to stay, even when it is not easy." Her silver eyes met his, reflecting the soft morning light. "And you did more than stay human. You remained honest when the world tried to deceive itself. That is rare," smiled faintly. "Then we have a chance. That's all any of us can ask for." The following day, the city gathered for the treaty ceremony. Ethan and Lysara walked side by side to the central dais, where thousands of Valyrians had assembled. The air buzzed with anticipation. Some elders wore expressions of approval, while others seemed skeptical. Yet, the moment Lysara appeared with the human, quiet curiosity spread among the crowd. Varian stepped forward to address the assembly. We gather here today to witness not only the signing of a treaty, but a demonstration of courage, honesty, and understanding. Commander Ethan Vale of Earth has faced our traditions, our tests, and our fears. He has remained steadfast, demonstrating that humanity can be trusted. A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. Lysara watched, her hand lightly brushing Ethan's arm. This moment, she whispered, was always possible, but few had the courage to make it real.
Nice.
Ethan glanced at her. Then it is only right to stand together. Counselors joined them on the dais. Varian raised his hand, and a glowing seal formed above the crowd. A bridge of energy connecting Valyria to Earth. The seal pulsed with light, symbolizing peace and trust between worlds. As the ceremony ended, Lysara turned to him. You've done more than I expected. You've shown my people that humans are capable of truth and honor. Ethan's expression was calm. And you've shown me that courage is not just for battlefields. It can be found in honesty, patience, and understanding. That's what makes civilizations last. They walked together through the streets, now filled with celebrating Valyrians. The city glowed with life, and for the first time, Ethan felt that he was truly understood, not as a human outsider, but as a partner in building peace. That night, under the twin moons of Valyria, Lysara spoke softly. When I asked you if you would stay, I was testing your heart. I did not expect you to show what you have. You have not only stayed human, you have changed everything. Ethan looked at her, the light of the moons reflecting in his eyes. And you have shown me that understanding and trust can be stronger than fear. That is something I will carry home to Earth and beyond. For a long time, they stood together in silence, the weight of history and possibilities surrounding them. Somewhere in the quiet, the future of two worlds was being written, not in weapons, not in conquest, but in courage, honesty, and the simple act of staying when it mattered most. And for Lysara, for the first time in her life, the words she had spoken so fearfully, "Will you stay?" no longer carried doubt. They carried hope. Ethan smiled faintly. I stayed, he whispered, and I will continue to stay. She nodded, a quiet warmth in her silver eyes. Then let us face the future together, human. Our worlds have begun a path that cannot be undone. The light of Valyria pulsed softly around them, echoing their words. Two species, once strangers, now shared something stronger than any treaty, the bond forged in courage. Trust, and the decision to remain when leaving was easier. The morning sky over Valyria shimmered with the soft glow of twin suns. The city had never looked so alive. Crystals along the towers refracted the light, sending shimmering beams into every corner. Birds of light, creatures native to the floating gardens, danced in the currents above the streets. The citizens moved with quiet excitement, aware that something historic was about to happen. Commander Ethan Vale stood on the balcony of the council chambers, watching the city awaken. Beside him, Lysara adjusted her robes and looked down at the crowd below. Today was the culmination of everything. The treaty would be presented to the people. Every step, every decision, every moment of trust had led to this day. This is it, she said quietly. The world watches. Our people will decide if humanity can truly be trusted. Ethan nodded, keeping his expression calm. Then let them watch. All we've done is stay true and honest. That has to count for something. Lysara turned her gaze to him, her silver eyes softening. It counts for everything, human. The accord begins with your courage, with your choice to remain when leaving would have been easier. He smiled faintly. Then let's begin. They walked through the grand hall, lined with crystal pillars that pulsed with light, reflecting the energy of the people gathering above. The Valyrians had assembled on terraces that stretched to the far edges of the chamber. The air was electric with anticipation, a mixture of hope and skepticism. At the center, a massive platform had been prepared. Ethan stepped onto it beside Lysara. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The council members took their places behind them, their robes glowing in colors of rank and tradition. Varian, the eldest, raised his hand, signaling the start of the ceremony. Today, Varian began, his voice strong and clear, we gather not merely to witness a treaty between two worlds. Today, we witness a choice. A choice made by a human who stood unflinching in the face of our greatest test. His courage, honesty, and patience have not only proven his intentions, but have also challenged the very way we see other species. Murmurs of approval and astonishment ran through the crowd. Lysara's hand brushed lightly against Ethan's. He looked at her, feeling a quiet strength radiating from her presence. He stayed. She whispered softly. He stayed when it mattered most. Ethan gave her a small nod. And you guided him, he replied. Together, we made it possible, the council continued. The trial of balance has been completed. The human commander faced visions of fear, of war, and of doubt. And he emerged honest, true, and unbroken by his actions. We are reminded that understanding and trust are not the property of a single species, but the right of all who are willing to take the risk. The crowd erupted in applause, their voices echoing across the crystal halls. Some cheered for the human, some cheered for Lysara, but all cheered for the possibility of peace. After the ceremony, Lysara led Ethan to a quieter balcony overlooking the city. The light from the twin suns created a dance of shadows and reflections across their faces. You have done more than pass a trial, she said softly. You have shown our people that humans are capable of truth, honor, and patience. That one choice to remain can change everything. Ethan watched the city below, the people moving through the streets with a new sense of hope. And you've shown me that courage is not measured in battle alone. It is measured by the choices we make when faced with fear and doubt. She looked at him, her expression thoughtful. Most outsiders would have fled. Most humans would have turned away. But you stayed. That is a lesson my people will remember. He smiled faintly. Then our worlds have learned from each other. That's all we can hope for. They stood in silence for a moment, the light of the twin suns reflecting in their eyes. The air carried a sense of calm, quiet acknowledgement that something monumental had been achieved. Later in the council chambers, Varian approached them. His expression was serious, but there was a hint of approval in his eyes. Commander Vale said, your actions have not only secured a treaty, but have also opened hearts. The accord will now proceed under the principles you have demonstrated: trust, courage, and honesty. You have proven that humanity is worthy of alliance and respect. Ethan bowed slightly. I am honored. I only did what seemed right. That is precisely why it matters, Varian said. Actions taken with honesty carry weight far beyond words. You have shown us that courage can come in quiet forms, not only in battle. Lysara placed her hand on Ethan's arm. You understand now, human. Courage is patience. Courage is honesty. Courage is staying when leaving would have been easier. Ethan nodded. I understand. And I will carry that lesson back to Earth. It will guide every step we take in the future. As the crowd dispersed, Lysara and Ethan walked through the city streets. The citizens greeted them with smiles, curiosity, and admiration. Children reached out to touch Ethan's gloves. Elders nodded in respect. And merchants offered gifts of glowing crystals. You have made a difference, Lysara said quietly. Your presence here has altered the course of our history. Not through weapons, not through words, but through simple choices and understanding. Ethan glanced at her, feeling a quiet warmth. Then let's make sure the future we build honors that. Humanity will stay true to the trust we've earned. She nodded, her expression reflecting both hope and determination. And we will stand beside you. Together, human? Our worlds are joined now not only by treaty, but by understanding. That night, under the twin moons, the city glowed softly. Ethan and Lysara stood on a balcony overlooking the gardens below. The air was filled with a gentle hum, the music of the city celebrating peace. You asked me once, Lysara said softly, if I would stay. And I wondered what would happen if I did. I feared consequences, judgment, and doubt. Ethan turned to her. And now? Now, she said, I know that staying is worth everything. And I know that some choices cannot be measured in days or weeks, but in the courage it takes to remain when leaving is easier. He smiled. then we have a chance. A chance to build something lasting. Her silver eyes reflected the moon's light. Yes, and we will build it together. Humans and Valerians alike. Over the following months, the accord flourished. Messages were exchanged between Earth and Valeria. Delegations traveled to visit each other, and knowledge once considered secret was shared openly. The world had changed, and the seeds of a lasting alliance had been planted. Ethan spent time learning the intricacies of Valerian culture, teaching them about Earth, and training young Valerian diplomats in the ways of human patience and diplomacy. Lysara remained by his side, guiding him, learning alongside him, and occasionally laughing at the small misunderstandings that inevitably occurred when two civilizations met. One day, as they walked through a glowing grove of alien flora, a young Valerian approached Ethan and asked, "Will you stay if we test your patience again?" He chuckled, kneeling slightly to meet the child's gaze. "I will stay. I have learned that sometimes staying is the greatest strength anyone can show." Lysara watched from a distance, her heart quietly swelling with pride. Humanity had earned her respect, and more importantly, her trust. Years later, when historians wrote of the founding of the Accord, the story always began the same way. One human stayed. Unafraid, when all odds suggested he might leave. One alien trusted him even when her people doubted. Together, they had shown that courage, honesty, and understanding were stronger than fear, stronger than pride, stronger than any weapon. And when Lysara spoke to the human ambassador once more, she asked the question that had started it all. "Will you stay?" Ethan smiled. Older now, wiser, and more certain than ever. "Always," he said. The twin moons of Valeria shone down, reflecting in the crystal towers, the floating gardens, and the hearts of two worlds forever changed. The human had stayed, and in doing so, had rewritten the course of history, and Lysara knew, deep in her heart, that the simple act of remaining when all seemed uncertain had been the most powerful choice anyone could ever make. Peace was not given. Peace was earned, one courageous choice at a time.